Hello there and welcome back to the webinar series on the Global DIY Network called The Future of DIY, New Trends and Innovation. I'm Ken Hughes, your host, and it is always a pleasure to welcome all the audience back, whether you're watching it live today or on demand. Very welcome back to you. We've had a fantastic series of sessions, and I'm sure you've been enjoying the content on the platform as always. I certainly have, and all the interviews with John Herbert and the CEOs as well. It's great to keep in touch as we roller coaster our way through this pandemic still. Wave 7, Wave 4, Wave 6. I've lost count. It's like Groundhog Day. But we're certainly all, retail is strong. There's a good, strong pulse. It's a great time of year. There's a really good sentiment out there, even from consumers, even as things are a bit uneven in various countries. I'm certainly picking up a good sentiment for retail, and I'm sure you are too, whether you are a retailer or a wholesaler or a brand. So listen, today's session, I'm really interested in. Obviously, the pandemic has accelerated online. We all know the growth of e-commerce. And so today we have an expert with us who's going to take us through some of that. I think I find it difficult sometimes to get access to people who really understand e-commerce and online, how to maximize our presence online. So whether you're a retailer or a brand today, I think you're going to get a lot out of this session with Andrew. Andrew joins us. He's the VP of Insights for a company called Profitero. And Profitero are e-commerce. They do e-commerce analytics. So it allows us to understand what works and what doesn't. And this is the biggest thing, I think, for e-commerce. There's so many things you could do, so many places you could be, so many ways to reach an audience. It gets a bit complicated, I think. And so it's important that we have someone to join us here today that will actually steer the ship through this and understand what the best thing would be to do. So without further ado, let's welcome Andrew. Andrew, turn on your camera and your mic and pop up and say hi. How are you today?
Hi, Ken. Yeah, very good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Where are you dialing in today from?
Well, as you can probably tell from my fairly plain background, I'm actually in the office today. It is a very quiet office, but I'm based in the UK, in Maidenhead, just outside of London. So yeah, nice to be back to relative normality.
Okay, yeah, good for you. How did you spend I ask every guest on my webinar series this question. In terms of DIY, what did you get up to for the pandemic? Do you have a new kitchen? Do you have a new garden? Have you painted something that we should know about?
Well, funnily enough, we are in the midst of getting a new kitchen at the moment. So I'm kind of dusting ourselves off every day at the moment. But I count myself as an enthusiastic amateur from a DIY point of view. But I'd say my best achievement was putting in a shower screen. That was the pinnacle of my career. It took me a few weeks to build up to it, but
does it leak?
That's what I've achieved. So yeah, in lockdown.
Does your shower door leak?
Not at the moment.
Hey, job done. So listen, my intro there, am I on the button there? I mean, so Profitero are e-commerce analytics?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we'll come into a little bit. Yes, we provide data on a daily basis across Amazon and other retailers as well. And I think you've absolutely nailed it, Ken. There are so many things you can do with e-commerce, and it's very easy to overcomplicate it. So hopefully today I will try and simplify a few of the things that you can do and avoid you wasting your time on those things that make no difference.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I'll hand the screen over to you. You take it away and we'll have a Q&A afterwards. So for everyone watching, if you look on the, I'm trying to remember the platform, I think it's down here somewhere, there's a Q&A box. And so please do give us your questions if you're watching this live and we'll feed them in to Andrew on the other side of the presentation. So over to you, Andrew.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A real pleasure to be joining you today. Just again, to build on from what Ken said there, very briefly, yes, we provide daily data. We are a global company, one of the world's leading digital analytics companies. So we're helping about 4,000 brands across about 50 countries on a daily basis, and really helping them to accelerate their e-commerce sales. And we do this by monitoring retailers such as Amazon and the ones you see down here across areas including product reviews, search effectiveness, efficient pricing strategies. And as you can see, yeah, we're currently monitoring 8,000 websites on a daily basis. In addition to this, we also provide an extra service on Amazon, which is daily SKU level data for Amazon domains. So really help you understand how you're performing on Amazon and how you're doing versus your competitors. Okay, but I want to start this off, and apologies, a bit of a deliberately busy slide, but what you see here on the left is just the search results from one single search term on Amazon.com over a 24-hour period. I think when you see it like this, you realize the changes that go on a hour by hour basis, and more frequently than that, not just with products appearing and disappearing, but other products sponsoring ones as well. And of course, brand investment, as Ken said, e-commerce has exploded over the last 18 months to 2 years. So winning on search on Amazon and on many other retailer websites, obviously I'm conscious many other retailers listening in today and on Catch Up, it's one of the most hotly contested areas of e-commerce. And there's been huge increase in expenditure, particularly on Amazon and Amazon advertising. If you look globally in general, e-commerce advertising rose over 40% over the last year, and Amazon actually represents 3/4 of that total. It's the largest platform by far, and they earned a staggering just over $13 billion in e-com ad revenue spend. So again, as we've already said, there's so many things you can do on Amazon. And again, our focus today will be Amazon, but a lot of what I talk about is equally valid for many, if not all, of the other retailer websites that your brands may be dealing with. But it's ultimately really important you don't waste your time on the things that will have little or no impact. So I always try with the customers. So I head up our insights team. I have a team of analysts working with me in the UK. We support our customers all over Europe, and we always try and simplify things as much as possible. So everyone talks about what is the secret to this, or infamous, I should say, Amazon search algorithm. It's certainly one of the most advanced retailer algorithms on the market. Now, there's a huge amount of opinion on this. I would say there is no absolute certainty. If anyone tells you they know the Amazon algorithm inside out, they're probably lying, outside of just a few very smart boffins in California. But there's general agreement on the main drivers of good search performance on Amazon. It's down to, I guess, these key factors. And again, this is relevant to a lot of other retailers as well. So number one, sales history. Just put really simply, you're not going to appear on top of page one if you don't sell. It's as simple as that. But also, I think very important on Amazon is relevance. It's a word you hear an awful lot. And Amazon, like many retailers, it's all about the shopper. It's all about the shopper experience. What they don't want to do is annoy the shopper by having irrelevant products appear on a search term. So just imagine you're searching on Amazon for power tools, and instead of getting a nice drill that you want to use at the weekend, you actually get a Power Ranger toy. And that can happen in many circumstances. What Amazon does is try to avoid that. So to be top of page one for particular search terms, your products have got to be relevant, but you've also got to have that search term within your product titles, within your descriptions, the bullet points. So the Amazon algorithm can pick it up and see that your products are relevant. Next, you've got to have a good conversion rate. And by that, I mean sort of everything that's really connected to the shopper experience. So are your products generally in stock? Do you have a competitive price? And that's that they obviously monitor versus various other competitors. Is there really good educational content? And by that would mean sort of nice images, use of video, and so on. And then finally, shopper sentiment. We'll talk more detail about reviews today, becoming more and more important in search as the COVID impact has taken shape, and really very important that you have the right number of reviews. And products that has more reviews is more likely to appear top of search results on Amazon. Just again, because the Amazon algorithm think that makes it more relevant, because shoppers are leaving reviews and therefore they see it as a one that shoppers are looking for. Now, of course, that's not the only factors. There are many, many others. I think two that we should mention, whenever you talk about Amazon, profitability is always there, very close. Now, again, the general consensus is the impact of profitability has dropped a bit, but it's very, very clear that if your products are not profitable for Amazon to sell, then it's very unlikely they're going to appear top of search results. And the final area that has grown in importance is the impact of social media. So if your products or your brands, if you are driving traffic to Amazon, specifically through a campaign that you're running, and that leads to a purchase, again, your products are more likely to appear. So those are just some of the factors. And of course, there are many others. And I appreciate when you talk about search algorithms, it can all seem very complicated. But again, I like to keep it really, really simple. And winning at search is very, very simple. So number one, and this is probably the most obvious thing I'm going to say, you just want to get as many of your products on page one as you can. And you do that by having great content and making sure that you include those relevant keywords within your product content so that shoppers can find your products. Now, much better that you aim high and ideally get into those top 10 spots. And again, to really do this, you need to get an understanding of what drives performance in search in individual retailers. And we'll come into that in a little bit more detail. But with so much that you can do, you really want to avoid wasting your time. And so the best way to do this is focusing on the real key trends. What are those really important relevant search terms that shoppers are using the most frequently to find your products, and just concentrate on those. And finally, it's also really important that you do everything you can to appear high up on page one organically. And by that, I mean kind of naturally. So again, it's driven by the same thing. It's driven by great content. This will drive typically the best uplifts and the most prolonged uplifts, and certainly the best way to do it, rather than just relying on sponsoring and paying for getting top of page one. Now, that's all fine, but I think our focus at Profitero, we always want to quantify the benefits of the recommendations that we give to our clients. So we've done a huge amount of research into search across many retailers, as well as all areas of the digital shelf, really to help our customers understand why they should be implementing all the recommendations. So starting at the top left, why should you get many products as you can on page one? Well, from our research, and this is all based on Amazon, but again, we believe it is relevant for other retailers as well. Products that are moved from page two to page one of search results can see sales increase by around about 50%. So a pretty significant impact by just getting onto page one. But the reason we say you should aim higher, aim for those top 10 spots, that if you can get your products up to there, then that sales increase goes up to anything about 86%. Now, again, lots of work you can do, but if you can just focus your time on those most relevant keywords, then typically we see twice the level of uplift than for lower frequency search terms. And we'll come to a little bit to show you how you can find those out. And then finally, I mentioned really important, you try and do that naturally or do it organically. And because if you can do that, typically we see you get an uplift 4 times that of if you pay for it through sponsored search. Now, that's not to say, I'm certainly not saying sponsored search is an important tactic. It really is, and we'll talk a little bit more detail why. But if you can, first of all, concentrate on optimizing everything, optimizing your content, you will get much longer, more sustained uplifts. So that's all great. That's the theory behind it. But in practice, what do you actually need to do to improve your search performance? Now, when you think in store, what you really need, I'm sure those of you on the branded side, you've got some great category managers to help work with the retailers to get your products, ideally at eye level, on the store planogram. I've been Profitero 5 years now. Prior to Profitero, I worked and headed up category management teams at customers such as Philips and also Mars. So I know the huge amount of hard work that goes into that. Now, unfortunately, online is a little bit more complex for that. And all these areas you see on the left-hand side of the screen, these are the areas of the digital shelf that most brands today are monitoring on a daily basis through some form of data provider such as Profitero. So by that, I mean availability, pricing, search performance, product content, and ratings and reviews. And when you think about, okay, that's great. Again, what do I do with this data? You really need to ask yourself 3 simple questions. So certainly, at least for your priority products, can I buy my products? Are they available? Secondly, are they easy to find? As a shopper, can I find my products? If I type in a keyword, does it appear? Is it on page one? Ideally, is it in one of those top 10 spots? And finally, am I giving my shoppers a really strong, compelling reason to buy that product? Am I doing everything to drive conversion? And obviously that's through great content, as we'll come on to talk a little bit more, images and videos, but also through things like ratings and reviews. Now, I appreciate this all seems like a lot of work, but and I know it's perhaps not something as exciting as launching a really great digital campaign across Amazon or many other retailers. But Put simply, if you nail the fundamentals of the digital shelf, it really can have a very meaningful impact on your sales. Now, again, as I say, we've conducted many ROI studies to look at the impact of changes on Amazon. And these generally provide some really clear guidelines on which levers to pull and when you should pull them. So if we talk, what is digital shelf optimization? Well, it's all about balancing the positive impact of optimizing the shelf. And that's things like, as I mentioned, the benefits of moving your product from page 2 to page 1, and ideally up to those top 10 spots, so an 86% sales uplift, or the benefits from adding some more great content, like adding video. And you balance that off between the negative impacts of if you're not doing this. So if you're not optimizing the shelf, for example, the loss that you can get if you're out of stock for just a few days, or also, particularly on Amazon, if your products are losing the buy box. The key thing for this is ideally, for a lot of brands, I know it's very difficult. There's it's very, very time consuming, particularly on Amazon, but ideally this should really become part of your regular behavior, not just a one-off, because certainly the key to success on Amazon is keep testing, keep learning, and keep improving. And by doing that, you're certainly going to get some success. So I highlighted availability there, and really, really deliberate. I think too often a lot of the customers I talk to, they're focusing on their content, they're focusing perhaps on sponsored search. But one thing they forget to do is really continuously monitor their availability on Amazon or any retailer. Now, of course, the benefit of digital shelf analytics, you can do that on a daily basis, which is really, really helpful, because as you can see here on the left-hand side, being out of stock for just one day on Amazon means it can take anything up to 3 to 4 days to recover your your sales performance. And if you're out of stock then for anything sort of over a week, that length of time pretty much doubles. Now, to understand this, you've got to think about the kind of interrelationship between many areas of the digital shelf. And one particular one is search. So again, from our own research, we know that if you're out of stock just for one day on Amazon, typically you lose one organic place. So that means you fall one place down search results. And of course, if that means you're falling onto page 2, we've already shown that's pretty serious. But again, if you're out of stock just for 2 days or more, that can increase 5-fold. So actually, you're losing sales while you're out of stock, and then it can take up to 10 days to recover your search position. So really important, you focus ideally on availability on a daily basis. And appreciate, particularly at the moment with huge supply chain challenges globally, it's very easy for me to say and hard to do. But if you can reduce those times of being out of stock, you're likely to minimize the negative impacts on your search performance. And it's the same with content. Getting the right elements on your product page can really drive some significant traffic and also ultimately sales. And again, it sounds like what I'm recommending here, this is a lot of work. One thing that we always recommend to our clients is just focus on a few priority products first. Really test and learn on Amazon. Maybe 5 up to 10 ideally at maximum. Test and learn and see what works. Now, you can see from the right-hand side, on our own research, we've looked at the elements that drive the biggest impacts. And number 1 is video. And then secondly, which can see a sales increase up to 36%. Secondly is by adding images. And so if you can do this, if you're not having video on some of your priority products on Amazon, really encourage you to give it a try. And also understand by adding some more images. But it's also great content as well, as you can see here on a page on the left-hand side. The option to compare your products. Also, of course, you have an option perhaps to link it to your own product store as well. A great way to drive brand engagement, but also make sure that you're educating the shopper. So first things first, make sure that you understand what are the most important content areas like video and images, and test and learn. Try adding them on and see what impact they have on your sales. But that's all about getting your product onto page 1. Now, if you really want to focus on those top 10 spots, you do need to get an understanding at a retailer level. Now, I know many of the retailers listening, they've had to work incredibly hard over the last 18 months, 2 years, just with a significant influx of additional traffic coming through COVID. And of course, that is changing our shopping behavior and changing the way, the long-term behavior, the way we look for products. And this is equally true for the DIY and home improvement category. But certainly having to satisfy the increased need for shopper education through enhanced content options. Now, again, we work with a lot of our customers that, and for brands selling on these websites, on how to use, or how really best to use the capabilities on offer, because many retailers have added greater capabilities for content over the last year. And we do this by highlighting those areas of content. So things like the length of your product title, the number of reviews, how many images you've got, and see which of those are very highly correlated with a strong search performance. Now, of course, we don't claim to be able to decode each retailer algorithm. Again, only the retailers really understand that. But we do have many, many great case studies in many countries where brands actually have used this approach to drive more sales. And so the output, as you can see, is this kind of bit of this heat map to really isolate what are those few areas on each of the retailers that are going to drive your search performance. If we focus on two in particular, the output also from our research is some very clear benchmarks by retailer, because sadly, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to content. And when you're wanting to drive search, you really need to have and understand what works particularly at each retailer level. Now, the data you can see here is from our very latest research, which we've launched specially for the Global DIY Conference. For those of you listening who don't perhaps have access to the slides, if you want to download this, please visit our website, which is profitero.com/global DIY. We will also be releasing a version for the US very, very soon, hopefully next week. Now, as you can see, what this provides is some clear content benchmarks across different retailers. So if you're wanting to understand what you should be doing on each of these retailers to drive your search performance, what should you be aiming for? So looking at Amazon, from our research specifically for the DIY category, we recommend a minimum of about 7 images, and ideally a nice long product title of about 130 characters. And having that allows you to put the most relevant keywords in there. So again, the Amazon algorithm can pick those up and see your product is relevant. And also you can see there's the DIY category is a very highly reviewed category. So if you see your products with very, very few, actually that may be a key action. Again, not necessarily, you can't do this for all your products, but at least your priority products if you're wanting to drive as many reviews as possible, because we know the more reviews is correlated to a strong search performance. Whereas actually on B&Q, you can see on the right-hand side, requirements is slightly lower. So in this case, we're looking at 3 images in general is a good benchmark to set if you want to have strong search performance. A shorter title, around about 50 characters, is good. And in terms of number of views, again, it's low. It's around about 9 or 10 is a sort of minimum benchmark you should be achieving. But really important, as I say, if you can understand what works specifically at a retailer level. And I mentioned reviews at the beginning. I just want to focus a little bit more briefly, because we do see reviews having an increased importance in driving good search results, particularly over the last 18 months. And I think, you think about with shoppers, particularly in some of the categories within DIY, it's fairly high ticket price items, and they might want that reassurance that they're making the right choice. Now, from our own research, again, you can see the best way to drive growth organically is from increasing the overall number of reviews. I think the biggest crime, and particularly on Amazon, but I would say, largely on any retailer, is if you've launched a product and then say in 3-6 months time, you've got either no reviews or very few reviews. It really just shouldn't happen. So first things first, and use the retailer campaign. Obviously on Amazon, the only real option is Amazon Vine, but you can use that campaign to drive more reviews. Equally, in some other retailers, maybe you can syndicate reviews from your own website or across other retailers. And unfortunately, the key to e-commerce is not just doing it once and then sitting back and think you've done it. you do need to kind of repeat that over a period of time. So you need to get a steady flow, we call steady velocity of more reviews coming in, because particularly on Amazon, we know that feeds into this relevancy score to help drive your search performance. And the final thing I would say, don't just focus on the number of reviews. Really important you tap into that really rich source of shopper understanding and sentiment that comes from the reviews. So you can see here, it's just one review we collected for a WD-40 product. Some really great themes here that the brand owner may not consider or may not have actually included within their product content. So things like obviously cleaning, but reducing dust contamination, saving another purchase, all that great ideas and great content that you can add back into your descriptions, your bullet points. And again, this is language that your shoppers are using. And so if you are adding that into your content, it's more likely it'll be picked up by the retailer algorithm. Equally, of course, if you're getting some negative reviews, you can react to it very quickly. So if you're getting some product issues coming through, use the reviews to pick that up quickly, and then perhaps do something to resolve it as soon as you can. So we talked a lot about keywords. Now I mentioned already, and again, you can see that here's the proof from our research on the left-hand side. You can get double the uplift if you focus on optimizing keywords which are very highly relevant and very highly used on Amazon. Really important as well. It also saves you wasting your time and make sure you get the biggest return for your work. Now, we're all really busy, and it's really important that you understand what those terms are, the ones that are most relevant to your brand. Now, on Amazon, there's a great source for this. I know on certain other retailers it's available. I'm sure brands here, if you talk with your retail partners, you may be able to have access to this as well. But if you are a brand supplying or selling on Amazon, you can use the Amazon search terms report to really highlight those words and phrases that shoppers are using on Amazon, and search the ones that they're using to search for your products or your brands or even your category. Now, all of these words that I've listed here, which is from the latest data in October, are very high frequency. Typically, we look at anything in the top 10,000 is a very high frequency search terms. So hand tools is the 961st most common search term used on amazon.co.uk over the month of October. Pretty always, the most common one is always PlayStation, and just recently Squid Game has been right up there. But as you can see, DIY, and there are many, many search terms that are very high frequency. So if your products are relevant to one of these search terms, focus on one of these. A question we often get is, all right, so you talk about focusing, how many should that be? I think the biggest mistake any brand can do is I've got a list of 50 or 100 search terms and I want to try and optimize all of those. It's just not possible. It's too much work and you can't do it. Typically, we would say focus on just 5 or at most maybe top 10 search terms in your market for your brands. Do everything you can to optimize the content. So get the most relevant search term in the title. For all other search terms, add it into the descriptions, the bullet points, and do everything you can to get your products onto page 1. And then once you've done that, perhaps move on to the next 10. But don't try and do everything at once. Again, it just will end in failure and you'll just be running around and not really achieving very much. Why is this important? Well, Amazon is a great indicator of demand. We've seen obviously huge changes in search terms, particularly obviously when we first went into lockdown last year. This chart on the left-hand side is actually from our research that we did at the time, really understanding what were some of the search terms that were suddenly trending very, very highly on Amazon. And very interesting, you can see we saw a particular group, we called it a power nesting. So a lot of words very closely connected to DIY. People were stuck at home, so they suddenly realized they needed some paint to do up their rooms that they'd been leaving for so long. They wanted to improve their garden, maybe get a hot tub in there, get some plants. A lot of keywords suddenly became very much more relevant. And you can see here, one of the fastest growing search terms we saw was for this Karcher product. In 1 month alone, saw a huge increase in sales rank from just about 2,000 up to the 14th bestseller within the DIY category. So you can see the impact that something like COVID can have, and seasonal impact can have on this as well. Just to give you an idea of how you can use this in practice. So one of our customers used to monitor search terms on an annual basis and maybe add different search terms into their product titles. They actually started doing that on a more regular basis, and they started doing it quarterly. Now, on Amazon, you have the ability to do some A/B testing. So on a given product, you can try perhaps 1 or 2 different product titles, see which works best, and then adopt it and put it live. But it's always good to test it before you do that. And by adding in some more relevant keywords, they actually saw a 30% sales uplift. So they now do this on a regular basis. They're actually trying to get it monthly. Now, I appreciate not many brands can do that. It's a lot of work. But if you are only doing this once a year and sort of optimizing your titles, if you can increase that to twice a year, you will start to improve your performance. If you're doing it twice, make it quarterly. And if you have the capacity to do it even more frequently than that, then that's great. The final thing I'd say, I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of really fantastic strategy sessions with a lot of our customers where they use this data to and see how it's trending over time, to isolate those seasonal opportunities, ones that they think actually could drive some really exciting new innovation. And obviously this has happened a lot during the COVID period. So, sometimes you can do everything. You can optimize your titles. You add in some great videos, maybe got great images in there. And it's a fact of life that sadly, the DIY category is a very competitive one, and you just may still not be appearing on page 1, or certainly not on a regular basis. And this is where sponsored search is still a very important short-term tactic. Particularly, I would say, when you're launching things like NPD, or if you want to, perhaps target a key competitor, which you can do on Amazon. The results really generally are really quick to come about. They're very quick to implement, but they're also quite quick to disappear. So really important that you realize sponsored search is a very short-term tactic. The reason that's the case is, typically sometimes brands who do rely too much on sponsored search, there's less incentive for them to develop that really strong organic content. And as I've shown you already, if you're not doing that, then you're not going to get the biggest uplifts that you can. So yes, absolutely use sponsored search. I'm certainly not saying it's a waste of time. It's definitely not. But use it as a short-term tactic to boost sales, not as a regular piece. Now, I just want to give you one example, and I appreciate this is a fairly loose connection, but this is connected to a home, and this is a home of Barbie. So we have one of our customers is a competitor of Barbie's Dream House, and they don't have anywhere near the budgets or the capacity that Barbie does. But what they were able to do using our data, they were able, during a particular holiday season last year in the US, they were able to monitor, and they could see on Amazon when Barbie was having trouble keeping this dream house in stock. And what they would do, because they were quite a small company, they were really able to mobilize their marketing team very, very quickly. And they started sponsoring Barbie's keywords, relevant to this particular product, so Barbie's Dream House. And in just 10 days of running that campaign, they captured close to an additional 7% of sales that would have gone to Barbie if they hadn't reacted so quickly. So yes, sponsored search can work really well if you're nimble, if you react quickly, but don't rely on it too much as a long-term strategy to improve your search performance. So, excuse me. I think hopefully that's given you some sort of key guidance on what are the key things to focus on. I think the final thing, and appreciate this is a bit of an old cliche, but generally with search, if you can't measure it, you're going to struggle to improve it. So it is really vital that you are able to monitor your search performance over time. And it's a fairly basic chart, but more and more of our customers are using data to monitor their search performance and really see their progress, comparing themselves versus their competitors over time. You do really need to be able to monitor your share of page 1 if you can. Now, appreciate if you don't have the capacity for a tool like this, then at least if you do this on a quarterly basis, just for a few simple key terms, just understand how many products you've got on page 1 versus your competitors and see if that's changing. And of course, if you do see sudden drop, then you need to have a quick look at some of the things I said. Look at content. Are there changes that you can make to add in to make to increase your share? One thing as well, again, we get a lot. So how do I drive, really drive engagement in my business? Because the e-commerce team gets it, but how do I drive that outside of the e-commerce team? Well, many brands, excuse me, and some of the most advanced, I would say, in e-commerce are already starting to add like a share of page metric into their employee bonus calculations. Now, I appreciate this is a huge step for many, many people, but by doing that and not keeping it just to the e-commerce team, you can really drive some great engagement. Of course, you have to be able to measure it. It has to be a fair target, but you want to start driving an understanding of e-commerce outside of e-commerce teams, because the impact on search on both online and offline is becoming more and more important. And finally, I know particularly on Amazon, as I said, I know it is a full-time job, just keeping your products on sale. We do appreciate it does involve a lot of resource. But again, the way to success, because Amazon is an algorithm-driven retailer, as many of you know, it's very difficult to have some direct contact with your vendor manager at Amazon. So you need to make sure it's data-driven. This is a visualization of what we lovingly call our traffic and conversion bubble chart. It's something our customers have access to. So it's every product, every bubble on here is an individual product. And what you can do, where it becomes useful, is we plot the data. So we look at the conversion rate, so how their products are converting across the horizontal axis. And we also look at glance views, which is data that comes specifically from Amazon. So what's the amount of traffic that's going to product pages? And that's on the vertical axis. But if the size of the bubble as well also represents how much they're selling on Amazon. But what's really important is if you quantify it and select the group into 4 segments. So products in that top left segments, they're products that are typically getting a lot of traffic to their product pages. The problem is they're not driving a lot of conversion. So we tend to find a lot of the first action on this is to focus on content. Really look at, typically there may be some content deficiencies like not enough images or adding video. And if you do that first, before wasting your money on sponsored search, then that's the best thing to do. And equally, products on the bottom right, these are products that have got great conversion. So if a shopper finds the product, they're really likely to buy it. The problem is not many shoppers are finding it. And so these are definite candidates where you need to focus on perhaps, firstly, can you do everything to get on page 1 organically? Or if not, these may be targets for sponsored search. Now, again, we had a customer that they shared this with their brand agency, and they realized they're actually sponsoring a lot of products where they had a very low conversion rate. And so they were kind of throwing their money away. So what they did is they transferred a lot of their spend from products in the top left quadrant to ones in the bottom right. And by doing that, over time, they saw a significant increase. So about a 10% increase in market share over time at a brand level, and also about a 20% increase in their share of voice on page 1. And more importantly, they improved their ROI. So again, really, really important you use data as much as you can to drive your search performance. So just to bring this to conclusion, again, hopefully 4 simple key rules for improving search performance. Get as many products as you can on page 1. And to do this, really important that you focus on availability. And hopefully if you've seen the impact that it can have, but if you monitor your out of stocks on a regular basis, you can reduce those negative impacts. Ideally, aim high, aim for those top 10 spots for the biggest stop lists. And you do this by optimizing your content. So really great product titles, product descriptions, adding videos for your priority products, getting images on Amazon, certainly, or multiple images. You saw the benchmark, a minimum of 7 images for the DIY category. And again, particularly if you can do that with an understanding of what works on a given retailer. Now, you reduce the amount of time you waste by focusing on key trends. focus on those search terms that shoppers are using. There's a great resource on Amazon, or as I say, perhaps have a word with, I know we talk with a lot of other retailers, there is some information available, but do try and focus on just a few keywords, don't try and do too much. And finally, earn it if you can, rather than paying for it. But if you do need some short-term support, make sure it doesn't become something that you rely on a long-term basis, because you really want to drive the best uplifts from that organic search performance. I appreciate there's a lot more we can talk about. We may have time for one or two questions. If you would like to find out more, again, we've actually created a whole search playbook. So for those of you listening in, again, please visit our website, which is profitero.com/playbook/search-placement. Be a lot easier if you can see the slides. There's a link on there. It includes not only a white paper, which has got much of the insight I've talked about today, but also got some great short videos from some of our media partners and other partners on how to win on search, particularly on Amazon. So with that, thank you so much for your time. I hope it was useful. If you'd like to get in touch, please do either on LinkedIn. But yeah, Ken, back to you, and very happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Excellent. All right. Well, kill your screen share there, Andrew. Well, actually, no, yeah, you could stay on screen yourself. That was amazing. I mean, I find sometimes the whole search engine thing, I think you really helped us kind of peek behind the Wizard of Oz curtain there. I think for me, yeah, listening to you, on one hand, I'm thinking, yeah, this is really easy. I'm ticking the stuff as you talk. And the other side I was thinking, too much to do. So here's the question. There's a few questions in from the audience, which is great. And I've written down a few myself. Let's kick off with something really simple. Let's say I'm a small, in fact, I was going to say I'm a small retailer or a small brand, but that's not true. I could be a huge brand, but I still might only have a very small e-commerce team, or the e-commerce team doesn't even exist. It's a sub part of someone's job, and you know the way it works. So let's say there's one person listening to this, and they're thinking, yeah, this guy is saying everything. I agree with it all, but I'm only one person, or this is only half my job. Give them somewhere to start. Give them just the one thing, because they try and do everything that you just talked about. It's, again, a bit too much. What would be the one thing that you'd say, look, here, just do this week?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ken. And it's surprising, actually, still that a lot of large brands we deal with, that they still have relatively small teams. It's growing. But so what I would say is that the number one thing is just focusing on perhaps one or two keywords. Now, if you've got access to Amazon, if you sell on Amazon, you will have access to the search term reports. So find out from there. If you don't, if nothing else, just ask a few friends, ask them to search for your product, tell them and get them to tell you what search terms they've used. So you can do a bit of very free, quick and easy shopper research yourself. Okay. For those one or two search terms, they are the ones, as I said, that is going to give you the biggest uplift. So just look at, again, one or two search terms and maybe one or two of your best-selling products. Just, if nothing else, get that search term in the product title. What we recommend is not packing. So on Amazon particularly, we said about 130 characters. That doesn't mean you put 20 different search terms in. It's got to be readable. It's got to be right for a shopper. But understand what is the most important search term, and then get it in that product title. And if nothing else, doing that will have an impact. Now, if you've got a bit more time, then look at the rest of your content, then the description and the bullets, and add a few more keywords into there. But if nothing else, let's focus, let's make it really simple. One search term, one priority product, add it into the title, and just see what impact that has. I can guarantee it will start to have a good impact. And the thing on Amazon, it's kind of, it is this famous Amazon flywheel. Once you start success, it drives more and more success. So you drive more sales, you appear more relevant, you get more reviews, and so on and so forth. Yeah. The key is just getting yourself up there, getting yourself visible in the first place. So do that one simple thing, hopefully.
And on that keyword point, Jonathan asks a really interesting question. And I suppose for us all playing in the global village that we live in today, there's more than one Amazon site here. So how do you personalize your product descriptions, your keywords across .co.uk, .de, I mean, that's another whole layer, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And it's a great question. We have, so some customers, they were nameless, have just, they're typically generally in English and have just used the same across. And they just then did they tested, they just did a simple translation of the English copy. There was one in German, and they saw a significant uplift. So yeah, I would say, I mean, it sounds, again, a very obvious thing, but get it in the local language without a shadow of a doubt. And you can use the same copy, but just a simple translation. It is vitally important. Personalization is very important. You've got to think about what's relevant for the shopper. So just having some content on there is not right. It's got to be the right content. And if perhaps I just extended another question. I talked about 7 images. So yeah, again, it was a bit of a, I say that and then leave it at that. Actually, it's not just getting 7 same images. Think about, think of it if you're a product that comes in a carton. And actually, from a shopper point of view, when they're using it, they're seeing outside of the box. So again, it sounds obvious, but show what it's like on the shelf, either the real shelf or the digital shelf. Show the packaging outside. Show the packaging outside of the box. Show the usage. Just try and think of all the different ways you can show it. So it's not about multiplying the same image just with slight variation. Think about different ways that you.
Yeah, I mean, I took that down as you were talking about images. I find it interesting from a behavior economic point of view. I think one of the problems with digital is we treat it so functionally as opposed to behaviorally, where we need to sell the concept. So in marketing, we always talk about sell the solution, not the product. Sell the dream, sell why you're buying the thing. And actually on Amazon, it's one of my critiques of Amazon, not Amazon itself, but the way the images are loaded up by the brands, it is all very functional. This is the product. And in fact, I'm buying a couch at the moment and I'm looking online. One of the aspects for me, this is a weird one for me, the way the couch will be in the room is you walk in behind the couch to walk around it. So the back of the couch, weirdly, is what I want to see, because I want to see, is the back of the couch finished as well as the front of the couch? And obviously nowhere online do you ever see the back of a couch because it's like, here's the front. And so, yeah, that idea of in a physical store, you can see all these angles. Let's try and replicate that. So, and what's your opinion on behavioral images on Amazon? Do you think that there should be like, here's people using the product, not just this is the product? Does that work? Any research to show that works better?
Absolutely. And particularly, I would say, so it does depend. If you're talking about more functional products. So if we're talking about paint, yes, you need to see all the product details. So you do need to see the front of the pack, the side of the pack, the back. You want to be able to read all the copy on it. But of course, to your point, you still want to see, a visual representation of what it looks like. So for my kitchen this week, I went into B&Q and I apologies to any other retailers on there, and I picked up a color book. Now, you want to be able to replicate that experience online. So if you can have an image of what that looks like with a room painted in store, great, do that. For the higher ticket items, it becomes even more important. And it sounds silly, like a drill, of just seeing a photo of someone using a drill, but it does. You're right. Behavioral aspect of it is all important. Yeah. Just seeing someone using it and going, oh yeah, not like what do I do with a drill, but just that simple aspect of seeing it used in practice. It really does. It really does.
I mean, the psychology behind this, for instance, if you have an image of a tradesman holding a drill and he's dressed as a tradesman, or she, that immediately gives the consumer confidence that this drill is being used by someone who's a professional and therefore it must be good. And so all the stuff that we do quite well in above the line advertising. So when we're selling stuff on billboards and bus shelters, and we've known this for 50 years, we would always make sure that the image says all the subtext that we wanted to say. And I think sometimes digital, in the hysteria of getting images up, it's just too functional, and we maybe need to invest a bit there. And in video, what about your video? Again, I mean, there's so much we can do with video. So yeah, why not just have the drill, but show it being used in multiple settings with multiple materials? So much you can do.
Yeah. And again, it's all about that usage. So shoppers are going online now, and particularly on Amazon, we know, Amazon is a sort of first source for many. It's actually overtaken Google in a lot of categories. And so shoppers are looking for that. So, an enthusiastic amateur DIYer like me, who maybe doesn't feel that confident about a power tool, I kind of, or no, I want to use it. But if I see it being used in practice, again, it's all about confidence. So it's exactly the same thing. I think if there's, again, we always get asked who's best in class. Appreciate it's outside of the DIY category, but typically Apple is one of the best. Now, really good because, like, I think we've all got a phone, right? We know what a phone does, we know what it looks like, but you look at how they've evolved those images from just photos of people with phone to they now add a bit of text on there, so you can see it online, but you're also seeing about the benefits of the camera, the benefits of the audio, all the different the multitude of services that now iPhones and things like that have. So if you do want to see, who does it really well, and if you talk about multiple images, do have a look on Amazon or other retailers at Apple, because they are one of the best. There are some really good examples within DIY category as well, but I think if I were to pick one best in class, I'd certainly go for them.
Okay, and this is a great question for where we are this week from Oliver. How can brands best take advantage of seasonal events like Black Friday? So do we go jump in and do we change all our search terms in our images because of the seasonal bit? Where do those big events fit into our content strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Oliver. Again, I would say ideally, if you can, obviously Black Friday starts, people were starting to look probably 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. Yeah. So it can become part of more regular behavior. So, obviously as a brand, you're probably planning Black Friday a year out, but in terms of search, ideally, I guess worst case, 6 months out. So 6 months ahead of it, and maybe if you can get it a bit closer, quarterly as part of this regular thing, just start to see what are some of the keywords that are trending, and do get those added in. So of course, there are other options on Amazon. You have what's called like back-end keywords. So these are words that don't appear on the product page. So you don't, as a shopper, you don't see it, but they can appear and they can be relevant. So there's a lot of good ways you can add it in, but I would get it in well in advance. Ideally, at least we're talking sort of a month, 2 months, 3 months, because search can happen very quickly. But equally, if you're starting to build that presence, it's very important to do it. So, yes, definitely do it, a seasonal approach, but try and do it a little bit in advance. Don't wait till the week before to suddenly change your titles. Yeah.
As you said, the Amazon flywheel, that's a great example. Like, you really got it started to get it built. I want to ask the question, and Rena has asked it. And it's what everyone's thinking as you're talking about reviews and ratings, and they've just written it down for us, which is great. How do you feel about companies buying reviews? And we know it's out there, we know it's a trade. You're saying, I'm listening to you, and if I'm a brand, I'm thinking, okay, got to get my ratings up, got to get my reviews up. What's the fastest way I can do that? I'll just buy them off the shelf. Off we go. What's your opinion on that market?
Yeah, well, there's buying and buying. So we know there's in certain markets, there's a lot of, if you're talking about fake reviews, then I would absolutely counsel against that. I would also not recommend that if you're a brand, you get all your colleagues to go on and put a 5-star review. Go, this is the best tin of paint I've ever used. Yeah. Don't do that, because you will get found out, and particularly on Amazon, and you can get your reviews removed. They do moderate the reviews an awful lot. So on Amazon, you have only really one option, which is, I mentioned, this thing called Amazon Vine. It is there. Unfortunately, that's the Amazon find ways of making money in a lot of ways. So you pay them. So that is a legitimate way of buying reviews. So you pay a certain money, you provide some product which gets sent out to some of their top reviewers, and they have to give you a review. It doesn't have to be positive.
Yes,
buy a positive review, but you can buy a review. So that's one way. On other retailers outside of Amazon, there are multiple agencies who will syndicate reviews. You might have your own DTC website, and you have your own reviews. Now, it's perfectly legitimate to syndicate those. A lot of retailers on the call will do that. Again, it's fine. So, fake reviews, absolutely not. But genuine reviews, yes, it's fine to do. And as I say, it's important that you do, because just getting a number of reviews and then sitting back thinking, that's it, my work is done, won't help you. You need to get that steady stream. Now, hopefully a lot of those will come through naturally, but sometimes you might need to boost it, particularly in the early stages. So
I get that. And I think it's the same point you just mentioned there. Even sponsored stuff is fine, but actually if you can do it organically, if you can build this organically, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and looks after itself in the long term.
Absolutely.
Sponsored stuff is kind of the sticking plasters to get going or whatever. I get that. I mean, listening to you talk, it's certainly like a full-time job for someone, isn't it? I mean, if I'm thinking about keeping up with the frequency of how often do you change the search words? I mean, as you talked about COVID, things change, the search words change. You got to be on that. You got to be on the seasonal stuff. depending on how much products you have, this is a big resource. So there are some companies listening to that simply don't have the resource. They either need to upskill and get that resource in, which should be a note they take, or else I guess they come to you. That's why you exist. Profitero exists by, I presume you have a consultancy kind of arm as well. It's not just analytics. It's you help the doing of.
We absolutely do, Ken. Yeah, and that's absolutely right. I mean, the one thing I would say, and I'm hoping my sales director isn't listening because he'll be kicking me. But I would genuinely say, yes, certainly we can do that. We can help. I think in reality, you're right. It is a full-time job, and unfortunately now it is a prerequisite that if you want to win on e-commerce, you've got to get that resource in place, because just doing it once a year really isn't enough. Because I guarantee the majority of your competitors will be doing it at least quarterly and perhaps more frequently. So it's again, it's a hard message, but it's one I frequently, we do get asked to talk to CEOs and board levels just to say, look, why do I need to have more resource? But because the benefits you can get from having all this data are significant. The worst thing is if you have the data and don't do anything with it, that's a complete waste of your time. But if you just don't have so unfortunately, the simple answer is, I'd love to say we'd help, but I would say the first thing first, get that resource.
Yeah, it's a bit like, I think, designing a website back in the early 2000s, doing it once and then never touching it again. And obviously, it gets out of date quite quickly. I mean, in search, it's got to be so frequent and so just because you come to it one day and then they go, that's that searchy thing done now. I've listened to Andrew today. You can imagine someone listening now going away, doing a huge amount of work for the week, optimizing it all and then not touching it for another 12 months, 18 months. So it is a continuous thing. Andrew, listen, thank you so much for demystifying your speech was called Playing the Algorithm. It sounded like Las Vegas, but I think certainly everyone listening feels a bit more confident that it's not a gamble, that it's actually a science. It's more science than art. And certainly listening to you, I think we got that really, really clearly today. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. You're going to share the slides, which is great, so everyone can get the slides from you. And that link you shared, I'm sure, has a huge amount of information in too. So everyone watching, if you're watching and you get those slides, click that link and download. Andrew, thank you for joining us, pal. Thanks, pleasure, everyone. Real pleasure, and look forward to having you back. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch over the time. Obviously, in terms of the webinar series that we're running, our next series of events, I'm sure you, like me, are staying on platform and soaking all the stuff up. I'm really enjoying John Herbert's series, and he's got an interview this Friday, actually, with a guy called Gerald Bouget. He is the CEO of Colemesse, the international trade fair there based in Cologne. And again, a really, really interesting insight, I think, into the live events industry, into trade shows, into expos. And obviously, there's so many of us who rely on that kind of environment to network, to sell. And I think that would be a really interesting interview this Friday. So tune in for that this Friday on the 26th. Our next session, which will be our Christmas one, it'll be in the 8th of December for the future of DIY. And so I will wear a Christmas suit. That is both a promise and a threat. And so we're going to be joined by the CEO of Near Street, a guy called Nick Brackenbury, and he's going to bring us through a presentation around the local future of online shopping. We all know that during the pandemic, local online exploded, I think, 4 times as fast as regular online. And so it's been a really interesting session about the power of local online. So please do join us for that on the 8th of December, where I will festoon the set in Christmas stuff. Remember, we are here and always here with our eye on the prize on the 8th and 10th of June to the Global DIY Summit in Copenhagen. And so pack your bags, buy your ticket, register. Many of you are, because you're on the platform, and then still the speakers are always being announced. And on this platform, you can click and have a look at all the speakers that would be there on those days. So please do keep an eye on that prize and join for us for all the webinars and the series in between now and then. Until then, I will see you on the 8th of December. I'm Ken Hughes. Thank you to the team there back at Base and Iñaki and all the work they're doing, keeping this platform running. Keep in touch with all your friends and network colleagues on the platform. Until next time, see you then.